Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the University of Northern Colorado. Thank you for joining us for a second UNC Talk session of 2016. My name is Erwin Raimundo, and I will be your moderator. Tonight's session will be a follow-up session to our FAFSA Facts Google Talk session from a week ago. Tonight, we'll be talking about financial aid Q&A. Before I introduce our panelists, I would like to remind you that through our hashtag UNC Talks, you can ask questions on Facebook, Twitter, our UNC admissions chat page, which can be found at unco.edu/admissions, and through the Google invite we sent to your personal email account. If we don't answer all the questions tonight, we'll post them in all those social media platforms I've listed. Now, joining us tonight from the Office of Financial Aid are three staff members. They are the Director of Financial Aid, Marty Samero, one of the great peer counselors, Carlette Igilus, and Jennifer Major, a financial aid counselor. Carlette, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Carlette. I'm a senior here at UNC. I'm studying recreation, tourism, and hospitality, and I've been working in the office for about 2 years now.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Major. I'm a counselor here at UNC. I've worked here for about a year now, and I've been in the financial aid industry for over 8 years.
Hi, I'm Marty Samero, UNC's Director of Financial Aid. Very fortunate to get to work with these wonderful staff members. I've been at UNC about 6 years, and I've been helping families do financial aid for longer than I care to admit.
Well, thank you all for being here tonight and answering some of these tough questions. Looks like we're getting some questions rolling in, so we're going to go ahead and get started. The first question is going to be for you, Marty. It's saying, when is UNC's priority deadline?
So UNC's priority deadline for financial aid is March 1st. If you look at a calendar, you'll realize that it's already past March 1st. However, you can certainly still do a FAFSA. We encourage families to still do a FAFSA, which is the financial aid application. And if a family does file their FAFSA between now and March 31st, we will consider them as on time as we can. We'll award them with all the financial aid that we still have available. So in some regards, we've extended that March 1st deadline through March 31st, but it still is a good idea to get it in as soon as possible.
Thank you, Marty. So just to be clear on that, they have until March 31st, but as soon as possible, correct?
Correct. And they can certainly file it past March 31st, but to be considered for the maximum potential financial aid that we would have to offer, the sooner the better, definitely by March 31st. They can certainly do it thereafter. And a key reminder is that if the family is still putting their taxes together, it is okay to estimate on the FAFSA to get it in by those deadlines, and then they can always go back later and update it with actual information, doing the IRS data retrieval once they have their numbers finalized.
Thank you, Marty. So the next question we have, I believe Carlette is best suited to answer as a current student. It says, I filed the FAFSA. I plan on attending UNC. Now what?
All right, well, if you plan on attending UNC, then the next step you would want to do is complete your Universal Scholarship application. And that can be found on the URSA, which is the student portal for UNC. And it's located under the financial tab on your left-hand side. And that scholarship application lets you apply for multiple scholarships that the university has to offer. And then it just kind of filters you in for what you can do. And then other than that, what you can do is look for outside scholarships that are available, maybe looking into your community or anything like that.
Thank you, Carlette. I'm going to ask you a follow-up question on that now. You mentioned the Universal Scholarship. How long does that take to fill out?
Universal Scholarship application is actually really, really easy to fill out. It only takes about 5 minutes because it's a lot of checking boxes and saying, yes, this applies to me, yes, this doesn't, or no, this doesn't apply to me. Just kind of going through and giving the application a little more demographic and background information to filter you into those scholarships. So it's actually really quick and easy to do.
Thanks, Carlette. I appreciate that. Jennifer, you've been sitting quite quiet lately, so I'm going to ask you a question. What types of financial aid are available to me after filing the FAFSA? This is a good follow-up question for the Universal Scholarship, I think.
Yes, this is a great question. After you fill out your FAFSA, what will happen is it will come into the Office of Financial Aid and we'll go ahead and review it and see what you're potentially eligible to receive, and we'll go ahead and award you anything that you're eligible for. Some of the things that you're going to see on your award letter can be grants. There's state grants and federal grants that you could potentially be eligible for. Other things are loans. There's your Stafford loans. You have your subsidized loan and your unsubsidized loan, and we'll go into more detail on what the difference between those two are in a little bit. Also, for dependent students, you could possibly see a Parent Plus loan appear on your award letter. WorkStudy is something that will show on your award letter if you're eligible for it. And then, like Carla said, scholarships are going to show up on your award letter. We have a few different scholarships available. There's your admission-based scholarships. That's something that admissions will go ahead and review your high school GPA and your test scores, so your ACT, SAT scores, to see if you're eligible for those. And then your universal scholarship application. Like Carla said, that's an additional step that you'll need to complete to be eligible for those foundation scholarships. So those are the different types of aid that you can potentially see on your award letter.
Thank you, Jennifer. I just want to ask you a follow-up question on that. Do you have a specific example of a scholarship from the Universal Scholarship application?
Sure. One great scholarship that we have available is our Striker our scholarship. And this is for any underrepresented female that attends University of Northern Colorado. And this is a scholarship that awards thousands of dollars each year. So, you know, like Carla said, it only takes a few minutes to fill out that Universal Scholarship application, and it's definitely worth it in the long run.
Thank you so much for that information. You kind of led us into our next question, listing out grants, scholarships, and loans. Marty, do you mind answering this? What is an award letter, and when will I receive that award letter, either in the mail or on my URSA account?
Sure. An award letter is just the terminology we would use to say we're notifying you of what types of aid you're eligible for. Jennifer did a great job of running through the various possibilities that you would see. Some students will see all of those, some might just see loans, type of thing. But the award letter should start appearing on your URSA as of now. And so students should be highly encouraged to go out there and look to check and see if their award information is out there on their URSA. If it is, great, you know, then you can ask follow-up questions or try to get a better handle on what they mean and what's out there and what's being offered. If they're not out there, then that means there's probably some follow-up information that the school would need, whether it be tax transcripts or just a worksheet to show us how many folks are in the family and how many are in college, things like that. So the awards should start already being out there for families that have done the FAFSA within up to the last few days even. If they're not out there, then there may be some follow-up stuff we need to do. We will be sending out to the new students a paper award letter, which is something you can hold in your hands and sit around the kitchen table and talk about with the family to determine what it costs, what aid you're being offered, how much loan should be willing to take. So you're going to be able to get it in many different ways, but the main thing is you should be able to start logging into URSA even right away to see if you've been awarded. And if you have, great, we'll still follow up with some paper information for you later, but it should be out there, or the follow-up information that we'll need.
That's great. And you previously said that March 31st is the new deadline. For students who haven't filled out their FAFSA, can you give them a time frame on when, after they fill out that financial aid form, they'll see that award letter?
Sure. If everything goes smooth, if the FAFSA is not picked for follow-up audit verification, it's called, where we need more information. It usually takes the government 48 to 72 hours to turn around the information and get it to UNC. Once we bring that information in, usually we will be awarding on a weekly basis. So usually it should be within 2 weeks at the outset, depending on what day you do it and what day we send out the next batch of awards. But it should happen fairly quickly within a couple of weeks.
Thank you, Marty. Jennifer, do you mind answering this question? There is a gap between what my award letter has given me and the actual cost of attendance. What do I do?
This is another great question, and it comes up a lot. More than likely, you are going to have a gap between what you've been awarded and what your actual cost of attendance is. And there is a few options that are available to students to cover that gap. One option for dependent students would be to have your parents complete the Parent Plus loan. This is an external loan where a credit check would need to be completed. It would be in the parent's name. And if it's approved, it will go ahead and certify the loan and it will cover your balance. If it's denied, you still get something out of it. So if you're a dependent student, the Plus loan is denied, you can potentially be eligible for an additional $4,000 to $5,000 in additional loans and unsubsidized loans. Depending on what grade level you're in is what's going to determine if it's $4,000 or $5,000. Another option students have is a private student loan. This is, again, is an external loan selected by whichever lender you prefer. It would be an application that you would need to fill out. If approved, again, we'll go ahead and certify the loan for whatever your gap is. Some other options would be Bear Pay. You can set up Bear Pay if you have a balance, and that balance will be divided into equal monthly payments, and you can pay off your balance that way. So those are the main options that we have for covering your gap.
Yeah, and don't forget to be looking for outside scholarships in your community,
Yes.
through your local Elks, Kiwanis, church type places too. High school seniors should definitely be working with their high school counselors because they're usually great resources for their community-based scholarships too.
There's also a lot of organizations out there that have a lot of scholarships based off of what you might potentially be studying. So that might be something to look into as well.
Well, thank you all for that answer. And just to be sure, could you tell me a little bit more about Bear Pay? And that's up to anyone in that room.
Okay. So Bear Pay is a really easy way to set up a payment plan for your covering your student bill. So it costs about $15 to sign up for it, but what it does is it breaks your bill down over the course of the semester to make monthly payments each month. So it makes it a little bit easier so that students can make those payments, or parents or guardians can help make those payments, so it doesn't feel like you owe 10 grand all at once.
Great. So if I understand correctly from what Carlette said and what Jennifer was saying, is that even though you have a gap in your tuition and award letter, we'll still find you financial help to make sure you can enroll for every semester, correct?
We'll certainly do our best. A lot of it is on us. A lot of it's on the student to, again, search out those outside resources though too. Definitely the community programs that Carlette was mentioning are great places to be looking. There's also things in this day and age where you see some GoFundMe pages and crowdfunding pages on social media. Haven't had a lot of that here at UNC, but we have seen some of it, and some students have had success that way.
A lot of it is just about like the student being proactive. If you're looking at your student bill in August and you're saying, hey, there's a gap here, I'm gonna have to pay for this somehow, looking at it in August or September versus the week before finals, is you're gonna do better in paying that bill off.
And summer employment too. I mean, it'd be nice to get that new iPhone or whatever it is that's coming out with those summer earnings, but it's also good to use those summer earnings towards school.
All right, thank you all for those answers. That was great. Carlette, this question is going to be for you. This viewer asks, how is my aid dispersed, or how does my aid pay off my tuition? And I really think that they're getting to is, how do I get my refund check?
Sure. So what ends up happening is once you register for classes and you pick what residence hall you want to live in and the meal plan or whatever, all of those things get added on to your student bill. And then the Friday before school starts is typically when your aid pays through, assuming that we have all the paperwork and you've accepted your aid and whatnot, then it'll all pay through the Friday before school starts, and it'll just disperse to your student bill. If there's any remaining financial aid after your bill has been paid, then it's available as a refund check. However, typically first-year students don't often get a refund check simply because they are living on campus, and so that does cost an additional amount. And the amount of aid that they've been awarded usually covers the exact amount of the year, if that answers that question.
It certainly does. And a follow-up question to that was, do I need to set up direct deposit, or can I pick up a hard check?
Yeah, so each student has the option to set up direct deposit, and if you work for the university, then you automatically set up direct deposit when you get hired. However, you can as well just go pick up a refund check at the accounts receivables office, which is also downstairs in Carter Hall. It's across from financial aid. And what you'll see is if you look on your IRSA where your student bill is, if the number is negative, then you'll know that you have a refund check available to you. So that's a really good indicator of knowing that you have that extra money there.
Thank you so much. This question is going to be for Marty. This viewer asks, I received more aid than I actually want to accept. How do I accept a partial award letter?
Well, if that's free money that you've been offered too much for, that's a great situation and a great place to be in. Generally what happens is people are offered more loan money, whether it be the parent loan that Jennifer Major talked about, or the private loan type thing. And a student is very wise to try to minimize and or only borrow what they need to get through the current semester, the current year. So you can certainly, when you're on your IRSA, it gives you an option fund by fund to accept or decline. If you accept too much and you want to change it later, that's not an issue, or the other way around. So, but you would do that through your IRSA to tell us how much of each program you want. Always take the free money, of course. Try to minimize the loans, but if you decline it or accept it, it's not set in stone. You can work with our office very easily to change that throughout a semester.
And something to keep in mind as well is the fact that the award letter is split in half. So while it may say that you have a grant for $1,000, you're getting half of it in the fall and half of it in the spring. So maybe you won't need the full amount of the loan in the fall, but you will need the full amount of the loan in the spring. So these are things to consider when you're accepting your award letter.
You know, Carla, very good point. The other thing to consider there too is you don't get billed for the whole year at once. You only get billed for fall and fall and spring, and Bear Pay is set up the same way.
Thank you again for all that information. Jennifer, do you mind explaining to our viewers what a COA is, or cost of attendance, that they'll see on their bill?
Absolutely. A cost of attendance is basically an estimated average that a number that we use to come up with what it's going to actually cost you to attend for that academic year. There's different things that go into that cost of attendance. So it would be your tuition and fees, your housing, supplies and personal expenses, transportation costs, all of that is composed into your cost of attendance. Financial aid uses cost of attendance to determine how much aid you're actually eligible to receive for the award year. Yeah.
So you mentioned fees. Can you mention just a few fees that students will notice on their bill?
There are quite a few. Carlette, as a student, do you remember any off the top of your head?
There's the student leave fee, which is the organization on campus that does environmental work. There's the technology fee and the library fee.
There will be a fee towards building the new campus commons, but all these students hopefully will get to see the benefits of. But I think the library and the tech fee are some of the bigger ones that come back to the students to help them with their time here at UNC.
There is a resource on the UNC website that does show you the cost of attendance, and it does break it down into how many credit hours, and it also splits it up into how much you're getting charged in individual fees per credit hour. So that's a really good website to use.
That's great. Thank you so much. Carlette, do you mind answering this question as well? How will I pay for my housing on and off campus? I know this is a question that popped up a lot on College Goals Sunday with first-year students.
Sure. So like I said earlier, when you choose to live on campus, like your tuition, your housing and meal plan will get charged to your student bill, and so it'll just get paid for when your aid or any other sources of monetary sources go into your student bill. However, when you decide to live off campus, what ends up happening is you accept all of this aid, and because on your student bill, the only thing charged there is your tuition, there's a larger amount of money that isn't being used there. And so typically students will get a larger refund check, and that's the money that you can use to pay for like your rent and food and groceries and whatnot.
And that's where it becomes important to have a personal budget, because you get that refund check and you think, all right, now time for that new iPhone.
Yeah.
But then you got to remember you got to pay rent for October, November, December, and into January. So.
Yeah. But it is really convenient because it may be less expensive to live off campus, depending on where students choose to live. And so that may keep a student from taking out additional loan money, because they could get by with maybe just one loan instead of two.
So I'd like to ask this specific question that came to the top of my head. Will loans also cover books and supplies?
You know, Erwin, there's a common phrase we use in financial aid called "it depends," and every student situation, bill, financial aid offers are all somewhat unique to the individual. In many cases, a student will have funds available to use towards books or a refund, whatever, but it really depends on each student, whether they're living, what their tuition is, are they in a program like nursing where it's a lot more expensive. So it's very possible, but it's certainly not a guarantee. And unfortunately, when you come to a financial aid office, you're going to often hear it depends.
It also depends on where the student's looking at buying their books. If they're going to go to the bookstore because the book has to be purchased from the university, it is going to be a little more expensive than if you find it used or if you find it online. So it depends also depends on the cost of the book and if you'll have enough in that refund check if possible.
So Marty, earlier in this conversation, you mentioned WorkStudy. I know there's a few types of WorkStudy, as in need and non-need, something I've learned in my short time here in enrollment management and student access. Can you go ahead and educate our viewers about the types of WorkStudy?
Sure, great question. And working on campus is one of the things that multiple studies across multiple generations have shown over and over, that working on campus, Carlette, definitely helps in many ways. It helps with time organization, which helps improve grades, and it also helps provide money towards the bill. At UNC, there's many ways to work on campus if you're a student. There's quote-unquote work study from the federal government or the state government, and that's through your FAFSA and through NEED. And we have quite a few student workers on campus that way, but we also have student workers on campus, in fact, many more student workers on campus who just work under hourly wages for a department. So if a student does the FAFSA and gets work study granted to them, need or no need, then that does not guarantee them a job, but it helps them when they go out to look for a job to possibly have an area hire them, maybe take a chance on them because it's not costing their department specifically all that hourly wage, but financial aid, work study is picking up some of it. But like I say, we have more students who work on campus just under hourly wages than we do work study, but the bottom line there is it's good to work on campus if you can. It definitely is a way to get involved and feel part of the community too. And there's lots of opportunities for students to work on campus.
So just a few follow-ups on that. How is WorkStudy awarded? Is there a cap to how much I can work? And I think you touched on it a little bit, but is it a guarantee that I'll find employment on campus?
Great questions, great follow-ups. WorkStudy, if you're awarded it through financial aid, will show up on that award letter, which is paper again or on your URSA. We do not place students. To get a job on campus is just like the real world. You have to go out, present yourself to a department, probably interview and convince that department to hire you, whether it's work study or hourly. So we encourage students to be very proactive in that regard. Again, even though there are lots of opportunities on campus, you're competing with other students on campus. And just like in the real world, if a student comes in like Carlette came in and knocked our socks off with wanting to work for us and her presentation, we hired her. And so we don't do automatic placements, and students are going to have to go out there and hustle a little bit to get hired. And especially it's difficult for incoming students who may not know the lay of the land and the lay of the university. So I always encourage when they come up either for a visit or orientation to at least start making some of those initial contacts. If they want to work in a certain area, if they have a certain skill like lifeguarding or something along those lines, then make those connections early in the summer and follow up with them when they get here on campus.
The other thing is to use their resources. Once again, they can go to Career Services, which is upstairs at the UC. They can use Bear's Career Connection. There's a link to that on the URSA as well. And that website is basically a job bank that is available for students to look at, and that has a list of all the work study positions if they're like hiring. And then it has like descriptions and how to apply and who to contact. So that's a really great resource. Most of the offices on campus use that, as well as a lot of places off campus will also put job descriptions up there for people to look at as well. And then I think one of the other questions was the cap.
Oh, yeah.
If there was like a cap on work study. Work study students were only allowed to work at about 20 hours a week, just so that we can maintain a balance between our work and our schoolwork. So that's our cap. if that answers that question.
And, very good point. Thank you for remembering that. The thing with working on campus and all those great studies that have shown how beneficial it is, there's a sharp decline in its benefits to being a negative on grades and an individual's life when you start getting into more like full-time jobs than part-time employment.
Awesome. A lot of great information there. Jennifer Major, do you mind answering this? What is the difference between subsidized and unsubsidized loans? It looks like the amounts are quite different on my award letter.
This is a very great question, a very common question as well. There is a difference between federal subsidized and your federal unsubsidized loans. Unsubsidized, or we'll go back, we'll start with subsidized loans, are considered a need-based loan that actually the government will pay your interest on while you're in school. Unsubsidized is considered a non-need-based loan where it accrues interest while you're in school. So that's the major difference between the two. On your award letter, you will notice that the amounts that you are getting offered are different. There are loan limits that we have to abide by every year. So we can't award a student just any random number. There are limits that we're allowed to award. And these can vary per student. So depending, the two major factors that are going to change these dollar amounts is if you're a dependent student or an independent student and your grade level. Depending on those factors is when you can see different amounts on those awards every year that you continue your education.
Bottom line is subsidized is better than unsubsidized to start.
Yes.
Yep.
And Jen, when does interest start accruing on those subsidized loans?
Yeah. So interest will start accruing on those subsidized loans 6 months after you exit school. So either your graduation or you
Take a semester off.
Yeah.
Hopefully graduate.
Yes.
Yes, graduation is always nice, something I keep my eyes on all the time. Carlette, this question is going to be for you. What is the Parent Plus loan? And if my parents are denied, what happens then?
Sure. So the Parent Plus loan is the loan that shows up on the award letter that students are given, and it's mostly for the parents to kind of help the students. Like Jen mentioned it earlier, but that loan does require a credit check. It's given by the government, so that's kind of convenient, and that has a fixed interest rate. But if the parent does do the credit check and they're denied, like Jen mentioned earlier, the student is eligible for an additional unsubsidized loan. But like she said earlier, again, that amount varies based off of the year that the student is in school.
Marty, this question is for you. What other alternative loans are available to me, and who do I speak to about that? I believe there's a specific point of contact in your office that handles alternative loans.
Sure. Sergio Rosales, who's done one of these Google Hangouts in the past, is our alternative or our private loan expert. There is a word of caution on private loans. Private loans actually offer for families with good credit a very competitive interest rate. But there are some drawbacks and differences between a private loan and, say, a parent loan. One of the biggest ones, and it's kind of a sad scenario to talk about, but is in a parent loan, if the student would happen to pass away, the government does not require the family to make those parent loan payments. On a private loan, they typically will require a co-signer for the student because we're talking typical student who really hasn't had time to establish credit yet. And so when that parent or relative co-signs on those private loans, even if the student would happen to pass away, that co-signer is going to be stuck with paying that off in most cases. The other thing with private loans is you have to realize is that just like credit cards in some regards, they offer very competitive interest rates, maybe even better than a Parent Plus loan or some of the government loans to start. But if you happen to miss a payment, they can skyrocket your interest rate on those private loans, as well as having different terms for payback. If you end up struggling later on with a series of unemployment or some illnesses, you have lots of options and opportunities under the government loans that you don't under the private loans. But private loans are a great way to help fund higher education when there's a gap that we talked about earlier. But any individual who wants or thinks they need to go the private loan route needs to do research on what the terms and conditions of those private loans are. And really anybody in the financial aid office should be versed on those programs. But Sergio is a great counselor and a great individual to touch base with on those.
Yes, I've had the opportunity to work with Sergio and shadow him on several occasions, and he's quite knowledgeable about the private loan industry. Quick question, what are the current interest rates for subsidized and unsubsidized loans? And anyone can answer that.
Well, Erwin, those will reset come July 1st. So we can't give you specific answers on those, but the parent loan cap's out around 8%. The subsidized loans are in the 4% range and the unsubsidized in the 5% range. And again, depending on an individual's credit history, in this day and age in the market that's out there, those are pretty high. But there are benefits with the government loans that a family would have to take into consideration on when it comes to repayments. So the interest rates are resetting in July, fairly high now, but still maybe a better option to the family than some of the private loans, but that has to be a family decision.
However, it is really convenient that those student loans, that interest is a fixed interest rate. So I'm a senior this year and I took out loans. Next year, if and when I take out loans again, they'll have their own interest rate, but it won't affect this year's loans interest rate. So.
Thank you. Jennifer, this is something you have helped a few students on, and I probably should have asked you last semester, but what do those red flags mean on my URSA account, especially on that financial tab?
Yes, so your URSA account is the main way that the Office of Financial Aid communicates with you on all the steps that need to be completed for your financial aid. Anything additional that needs to be completed, you're going to see a red flag for any step that needs to be completed in there. The red flag will disappear once you complete that step and it will turn green. So once you complete those, everything turns green. I still recommend you going into your URSA account periodically and reviewing that to make sure nothing has popped up after we reviewed all your documents, to make sure everything's complete, we don't need anything else from you. And I would just recommend doing it even after your financial aid is paid, just to see if there's anything out there that pops up.
A common one, Jennifer, would be good news if you received an additional scholarship.
Yes.
There might be a red check mark for a thank you letter required would be a good example of that.
Yep.
And a positive example of that.
Yep. So always check your URSA account.
Yes, the entrance counseling and MPN were the issues with my account. Carlette, here's a question for you. How do I remain eligible for aid? Is it just given to me every year even though I get bad grades or don't show up to class?
So unfortunately, we do want our students to succeed here at UNC. So in order to stay eligible for aid, students have to maintain a cumulative GPA of over a 2.0. They have to be passing over 67% of their classes, which means that when you register for classes, you're not registering for 4 classes and then dropping 3 of them over the course of the semester. You want to be passing the majority of those. And then the other way to stay eligible, and this primarily applies to 5th year seniors, would be staying below that 120 max of credit hours.
And you would need to reapply each year.
And yeah, you do reapply each year for aid. So that means completing your FAFSA each year. Yeah.
Marty, I'm going to throw this question your way. How do I pay back my loans? I graduated. Do I pay them back at the end of every year? Do I cut a check to UNC? How does that process work out? Is there a website I go to? Can you tell us a little bit more about paying back loans?
The one nice thing with even the private loans and the government loans is there's never any penalty for paying it off early, and we would always encourage somebody to look at, are they able to start making payments on those? There's good news and bad news, Erwin, when it comes to repayment. The government gives a lot of options. I think there's 7 or 8 different repayment plans for when a student is done. So by and large, a student does not have to make payments while they're in school, at least half time, and depending on the loans, up to like 6 months after they graduate before the payments would start. If they stay with the government loans, they would be paying not UNC, but the government directly, and the government can work with a student on which payment plan best meets their needs. There's standard repayment, there's extended repayment programs, there's some that are based income-based repayment. The President Obama rolled out last fall a new one called Repay. And so again, that one may be the best for most students in this day and age, but they do have some options that they will have to research when they get to that point. But by and large, what I've seen is that the government will work with students and families to find a repayment program that best fits their needs. And students should be able to work with them to figure out what loan payments they have once they're done with school. And again, hopefully graduation versus dropping out or stopping out.
Yep. And then the website to be able to look at all that information is nslds.ed.gov. And that's the National Student Loan Database System. And so it allows students, and you can even look into this now, even before students graduate, look in and say, oh, this is how much money you're taking out of loans. And it'll also show you the interest rate and how much you need to pay in that as well.
Who's your lender, all that
And they've got good calculators out there when it comes to those repayment plans of plugging in information to help you make a good decision.
Yeah.
Okay, so this next question is going to be for Jennifer, and it's a question we hear a lot in the Office of Financial Aid, especially this time of year. My parents finally filed their taxes. Should I go back and amend my FAFSA?
Yes, so like Marty had mentioned earlier, there is a priority deadline, and not all students and or parents have completed their taxes by that deadline. So we encourage you to fill that out with estimated figures so you can meet that deadline. Once you have your taxes completed, we absolutely want you to go back and import through the IRS database, or you can go ahead and input the numbers yourself on what the actual accurate numbers are. This gives us an actual picture of what you're eligible for, not based on estimated amounts. So we definitely encourage you to go back in and update it once you have filed your taxes.
And a cautionary tale there, we encourage you to estimate, but we encourage you to estimate as accurately as possible, because if you estimated, oh, we made $10,000 this year, but it's really $80,000, when you go back in and update that, that could impact what I were able to offer you a little bit. So estimate, but please estimate accurately. So when you do that update, hopefully your aid isn't changing very much, if at all.
And we do highly recommend you use that IRS data retrieval tool, mostly because it does eliminate a lot of human error. It just directly imports from the IRS to the FAFSA, so you don't accidentally type in one too many zeros. So yeah, it's really important.
And we do have a decent little video on our financial aid website about how to use the IRS data retrieval tool that seems to help families when they get to that point too.
Thank you. So Carlette, you mentioned you're about to graduate sometime here in the near future. I think you could answer this question. I graduate in December. How do I set up my aid for one semester?
That's awesome. Well, if a student is graduating in December, like we mentioned earlier, the award letter and the student bill is only set up per semester. So what would end up happening is the student would register for the fall semester, and the bill would pay, or the financial aid would pay for the bill. And then at the end of the semester, when the student doesn't register for the following semester, then financial aid will see, oh, hey, they're not registered. They can't get financial aid unless they're registered, and so they just won't get any aid for that spring semester. So really, seniors who graduate in December don't have to do anything in order to get that partial semester paid out. They just need to be a full-time student in order to be eligible for all those grants and scholarships that they may have.
Thank you, Carlette. I appreciate that answer. Jennifer, I'm going to ask you to answer this question because you spoke about the Universal Scholarship a little bit earlier. I filled out the Universal Scholarship application. How do I know if I'm receiving any additional funds?
So once you complete your Universal Scholarship application, like Carlette mentioned, it's in your URSA account under the Financial tab. You're going to see a link that says Universal Scholarship Application. You're just going to click on that, and it's literally a 5-minute at the most application. Once you submit it, you're going to be filtered into anything that you possibly qualify for. We have almost 600 scholarships available from Foundation, so that's, like I said earlier, definitely worth your time. If you're selected for one of these scholarships, what's going to happen is we're going to offer it to you. Once we offer it to you, you're going to get an automatic email sent to your student Bear Mail account that says, congratulations, you've been offered this scholarship. There's additional steps that that are required to accept it. And Marty brought up a good point. A red flag is going to come up into your IRSA account that a thank you letter is required. So like we mentioned earlier, you always want to keep an eye on your student email and your IRSA account because things do pop up throughout the semester. What that email that's going to be sent out to you is going to let you know additional steps are required. It's also going to provide a link where you need to go to write a thank you letter. These scholarships are all donations from donors. So we require all students to write a thank you letter to that donor so we can show our appreciation for them donating the funds that they are. Very simple process. You write your thank you letter. There's a link in there to upload. Go ahead and upload it. One thing I would like to mention is when you upload your thank you letter, it's not going to automatically move that red flag to a green flag. That's something that's going to be done manually on our side. So once you submit your thank you letter, we'll review it, make sure everything looks good, and then we're going to update that flag on our side to green. So that's how you know that we've reviewed your thank you letter and you are ready to go to receive that scholarship.
Thank you, Jennifer. Appreciate that answer. Marty, I'm going to ask you this one because I have a feeling that you've answered this question quite a bit. What if I want to study abroad? Will my award letter consider that?
Hey, Erwin, studying abroad is something I was fortunate enough to be able to do, and it was an experience of a lifetime. And fortunately, UNC has a great study abroad program. Unfortunately, study abroad is very expensive in most cases and can be taxing on a student's financial aid situation. If a student is trying to study abroad during the summer, it may be that the only options or some of the limited options they have to them are private student loans. If the student is trying to study abroad during the fall or spring semester and they're going through one of the UNC approved programs with our study abroad office, then it's possible that the financial aid that you'd receive during a regular semester can go towards that study abroad program. Again, though, those costs are usually going to be substantially higher than a typical semester, but it's certainly something I encourage every student who can find a way to do it because I think it truly is event-changing experiences. In our office, Justin Davis is a great counselor, and he works with students all the time on study abroad options and possibilities. So it's something you definitely need to plan ahead for, but we've got like I say, a very good study abroad office on campus, and Justin Davis in our office can help students work the financial aid on those.
So Carlette, this is going to be a question for you. It's similar to the question I previously asked, but not really. What if I want to take a semester off? What do I do?
So if you want to take a semester off and are planning to return to UNC later, you would start by letting the registrar's office know, and then coming down to our office and also letting us know that this is a plan that you have, mostly so that we can look into canceling your financial aid for the following semester, so we're not pestering you later and saying, hey, you need to register in order for us to give you this. And then in addition to that, that's something you need to take into consideration is if you did take out any loans, you'll probably end up going into repayment because a semester takes about 5 months. And so that 6 months, say if you take the spring semester off, would be June. So you will start getting notices that you need to start making payments on your loan. So that's definitely something to take into consideration. And then if the student is going to take that semester off and does want to start making those payments, which might be a good idea, they would look into that website I mentioned earlier, nslds.ed.gov.
So Jennifer, this question is for you. I have a college savings account for my family, but I forgot to list it on my FAFSA. Will this change my EFC?
The best way to answer that question is anytime you forget anything on your FAFSA would be to come down to our office and talk and speak with a counselor. These things aren't as easy as they seem just to answer a simple question. So we want to make sure we guide you in the right way to fix what you left off. And, to be honest, most things can affect it. Some things, we put it on and it won't affect it. So it's definitely a thing that you'd want to come down and speak with a counselor, and we can guide you the best way we can to resolve the issue.
One thing to keep in mind, Erwin, is a lot of families will just automatically go out and change the FAFSA and make changes and thinking, oh, well, UNC will get it and it'll all update. That doesn't necessarily happen that smoothly. Yes, a family can keep making changes, and some do. I mean, it's incredible. Some people seem to go in and make changes on their FAFSA daily. But those don't automatically just come in and flow in and be taken for gospel at that point, which is why Jennifer's comment about if you've got a situation or you have made changes, it's best to give our office a call to make sure that we can acknowledge and accept those changes or help you work to getting it straightened out.
So Marty, while I still have you on the line, I'm going to ask you to answer this question. What if a student of ours here at UNC needs emergency funds at any time during the semester? Do they have to take out additional loans, or is there something set up for them?
A little bit of both. We do have some options. If an individual is stricken by true life circumstance, we may very well have some additional funds through generous donors and individuals who've done calling campaigns to alumni and stuff to get funds for those types of emergency situations. If it's, hey, I just need $400 or $500 till my loan comes in, you can work with the financial aid office and the cashier office on doing what's called an emergency cash advance. So there are some options for the student, but if a student does run into a true tough life situation, it's always good to come in and at least ask what options may be available to them. But we do have some short-term loan programs, and we do have some potential donor funds that Jennifer talked about through the foundation and stuff that could help students when there are true tough life situations.
So Carlette, here's a question for you. I still don't understand my award letter. Is there a specific place on campus or a number to call where I can get some help?
Sure. Yeah, sure. So our office, we're open 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. So students are welcome to call or come into our office and ask those questions. Everybody, all of our peer counselors know how to read the award letter, and so we can explain them to you and explain the difference between the loans and the grants and any scholarships that you may have up there. And then our phone number for our office is 970-351-2502.
Hey everyone, when all possible, the Office of Financial Aid, we take emails, we take phone calls, we take walk-in appointments. I always encourage students, if possible, to come on in and meet with someone face-to-face. One, it's just a more personal connection. Also, then you find out and have a connection. You write down, I met with Jennifer, this is the information I have, so you can keep referring back. We've got great people on the phones and at the counter and answering emails. But if at all possible, I always encourage families to make a campus visit or an office visit to see if they can get their situation resolved, as well as take notes from that office visit too, because financial aid can be complex and you want to make sure that you walk out with an understanding or that we've answered the question that you think you've asked versus the question that we may hear differently.
And a lot of the times coming in is a lot better just because you typically families come up with more questions while they're sitting there. And so it's a lot easier to ask those questions in person rather than on the phone. And you also get, if you're speaking with another peer counselor, then you're speaking with another student, which is really beneficial to future first-year students, because then they get to hear that experience from a peer as opposed to someone who hasn't been to school recently.
So Marty, with changing legislation and with elections coming up, there's a lot of institutional and federal changes in policy. When will the FAFSA be available for the following year?
Hey, Erwin, great question. And for those who are familiar with the financial aid process, I think they're familiar with the fact that the FAFSA usually opens January 1st, New Year's Day for families for the following fall. As of last fall, President Obama has altered the opening date for FAFSA for the 17-18 year. So actually in October of this year, of 2016, is when the FAFSA will open for fall of 2017. Thank you. So that is a major change for the FAFSA process. Yes, you have to still reapply each year, but instead of opening in January, the FAFSA will open in October. And there are some other good news things in there that might be a little too complicated for a Google Hangout when you talk about which financial year you use for the FAFSA. But the government has put in a process where you'll use older financial data, which may be a little bit stale, But again, instead of coming up with estimates on the spot or trying to figure it out, they'll be actually asking families to use 2-year-old data, which will have already been filed with the IRS. So a couple big changes definitely coming as far as the open date for the FAFSA, and then what type of tax information will be required for the FAFSA.
Jennifer, I was wondering if you can explain what the COF is to our audience.
Sorry. Yes, that's the Colorado Opportunity Fund that's available to Colorado residents. This is an application that you would fill out online, and then it will carry out through your whole lifetime of your education. And it's basically a stipend that gets applied to your account. You're not going to see it show up on your award letter as an actual award. It's going to be a credit on your tuition on your bill.
So one question that came in, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm going to try to answer it on my own. It looks like the IRS retrieval tool wouldn't have the parents' taxes on file and available for March 1. But since we extended our deadline to March 31st, they should have no problem. Is that right, Jennifer?
Yes, that is correct.
So it looks like we have time for one more question. Marty, I'm going to ask you to answer this. I recently received my acceptance letter from UNC and accepted and completed my FAFSA, but one of my parents lost their jobs. How do I change this on my FAFSA?
Hey, Erwin, great question. And unfortunately, life events like that happen. We also have sometimes where family members do pass away, or there's births in families. So anytime you have those types of changes in a FAFSA situation, we would encourage you to contact our office. Justin Davis, who I mentioned earlier about study abroad, also helps work with families on special conditions, special circumstances situation, including loss of employment or change of employment, you know, and those other types of things that could impact what the FAFSA numbers are and look like for a family.
All right, thank you, Marty, and thank you all for answering those questions tonight. I want to personally thank everyone for joining us here this evening. I want to remind you that the Office of Financial Aid is open Monday through Friday from 8 to 5, and you can contact them at 970-351-2502. If we didn't have time to answer your questions, be sure to look at all our social media platforms because those answers will be posted there. Once again, thank you, and go Bears.